That's some really good picking, Max.
I think it's on. Okay, there we go. I can hear the feedback. Good morning and welcome. I'm Reverend Susan Frawley, and it is my honor and privilege to be in the pulpit here this morning at the First Unitarian Universalist Church in Niagara Falls. And so just take a look around, say hello just by waving as we greet each other for our morning. We're being COVID sensitive this morning, because I know that's going around again, so hopefully we're all being safe. So let's begin with our land and social justice acknowledgement. The land that our church sits upon is land that was stewarded by the Haudenosaunee people. It is our obligation, our duty, and our privilege to continue to hold this land as holy and sacred. As Unitarian Universalists, we uphold social justice. It's part of our covenant. It is part of our principles. And so with that, we use our voice, we use our presence, and we use our vote to raise up the voice of those marginalized in society and to create dignity, to create inclusion, and to create equity in our world. And now I call you to be present. Take a moment. Every Sunday is different. Take a look around us. Observe things that make our sanctuary special. Just take a moment to breathe in and to let all of your senses experience the presence of being here. Our opening words this morning come from Helen Keller. The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt with the heart. Words of Helen Keller. And so let us light our chalice. Wally, I think you're our usher today, so you get to light the chalice. There you go. Added benefits of service this morning. Yes. And if we can all find our chalice lighting words, as Wally lights our chalice, let's say them together. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. So I invite you to find in your gray hymnals 194, Faith is a Forest. Patty's going to play it through one time so you can have the melody. And then we will all join together. You may rise in body or spirit as you be willing or able, and we will sing together.
Clouds play and hide. Insight can hear the still small voice deep inside. Web of life, may this thread I weave. Strength and commitment to all I believe. Vision be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this tender day. Speak through me in all I do and say. Seeds of both meek and strong are scattered in air. today. Speak through me in all I do and say.
Thank you. Please be seated. It is part of our custom, it is part of our way of being together as a covenantal congregation where we share those things that are on our hearts and our minds. This morning, I am filled with grief, and I will share with you Mariana Elliott, who was one of the leaders of the Hamburg UU Church, passed away suddenly last weekend. She leaves a big hole and a big void in the Hamburg church community, as well as the larger. She was very involved in many things in Hamburg, so I'm putting a stone in her honor into our vase, and I'm going to light a candle also in her honor. And I invite whoever would like to come forward to come and share your joys, your sorrows, or your concerns.
Hello.
So I'm going to, oh, I forget. Do I put the rock in here? In there. This is for my nephew David, who passed away in November. He was 55 years old. We did not hear a thing about it because he did not give our information to his children and his ex-wife. So I just found out this week. So I will light a candle for him. And I also am going to light a candle for my adopted brother George, who just turned 90 years old on Friday. And my other niece, Tanya, sent a picture. Boy, he's still hot.
Desi has a joy or sorrow.
I just wanted to say good morning to all of you. And a very sad thing happened on Friday afternoon in New York City. Flaco, the owl, the great horned owl that had escaped from the zoo about a year ago and was living in the wild in Manhattan on the tall buildings and in Central Park. Flaco died on Friday because he crashed into a building, which is often the fate of our wildlife here. So if someone could light a candle for me for Flaco, I would very much appreciate it.
Is there anyone else who had anything they wish to share this morning? Oops, getting feedback today. For all the joys, for all the sorrows, for the concerns, those that have been shared and those that are held in hearts and minds, to all of these we give our best intentions and our best energy. We bless them, amen and amen. So this year, started on Valentine's Day, the UUA had a Side with Love, 30 Days of Love. And every week there was a theme. I think I shared one of them the last time I was here. It actually ended last week, but of course, Siding with Love never ends. And Nora Rassman, who's a writer in the UUA magazine, wrote this for that last week, but I think the words she shares go on. So these are the words of Nora Rassman talking about strong relationships will get us through. In the final week of 30 Days of Love, we explore the theme of democracy and electoral justice and how it is situated within our broader organizing. As we begin our electoral work of 2024 together, I return to recent remarks by Working Families Party National Director Maurice Mitchell. The organizing principle that we build trust by telling the truth about the world we share. The core truth that I'm reckoning with this year is that democracy, the promise of our elected officials, feeling a direct and accountable tie to us, their electorate, and it has always been aspirational. Now, I acknowledge the fear that many of us hold that the threads of democracy that we've had will fully unravel, and we will lose the pieces of representation that we rely on. And I ground in the possibility that the millions of people who have come into social movements in the past 4 years hopefully might push closer to a more just world. We will continue to fight and build the power of the working class multiracial majority to exact wins from the people in power that will make all of our lives better. This year, we will tell the truth to each other and ourselves about the political landscape we inhabit, the conditions and threats that we are facing, and the power of the left. We will share heavy-hearted the truth that we are facing massive devastation and suffering by war and genocide, climate catastrophe, legacies of colonization and imperialism, and rising fascist politicians and policies. We will share the bitter reality that our social movements fighting for justice have grown while also facing massive backlash and criminalization. We will also share in the conviction that our work in the year ahead is to continue to fight for the political conditions where winning is more possible. And this is an abbreviated portion of her Strong Relationships Will Get Us Through. You can find it also at uua.org in the area of 30 Days of Love under the 4th week of readings and areas of thoughtfulness. And so, it is time where we take up our offertory, which goes to serve the very good works of this church.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free.
So our sermon title, doesn't sound like I'm on. Is it? Okay. Okay. So our sermon title this morning is called, Who Loved You into Being? And to begin this, I want to read to you a very short paragraph that comes from the Fred Rogers archives. And they write, throughout his career, Fred Rogers, both on television and off, emphasized the importance of creating a peaceful environment and a world where all children could grow and learn. He is quoted, "Our goal as a nation must be to make sure that no child is denied the chance to grow in knowledge and character from their very first years," end quote. Rogers said this at a White House gathering for Early Childhood Initiative, a program for promoting literacy. In Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, every child is welcome into the world of learning, not just a few, not just ones from certain neighborhoods, but every child. Rogers was the recipient of 2 Peabody Awards, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is our nation's highest civilian honor and award, and 4 Emmy Awards, including the Lifetime Achievement Award, which was bestowed on him in 1997. Rogers, known for always taking the time to remember, reminded the audience that night that thoughtful expression should be followed by thoughtful expression should be followed by thoughtful reflection. As a reminder, below is Mr. Rogers' acceptance speech, and it starts here. So many people have helped me to come here this night. Some of you are here. Some are far away. Some are even in heaven. All of us have special ones who loved us into being. Would you just take, along with me, 10 seconds to think of the people who have helped you become who you are, those who cared about you and wanted what was best in your life. 10 seconds. I'll watch the time. We're not going to do that just yet. Moving. Whomever you've been thinking about, how pleased they must be to know the difference that you feel that they have made. You know, they're kind of people television does well to offer our world. Special thanks to my family, my friends, my coworkers in the public broadcasting and family communications, and to this academy for encouraging me, allowing me all these years to be your neighbor. May God be with you. Thank you very much. End of the quote of his acceptance. Fred Rogers. A movie which was A Beautiful Day talked about his life. And in the movie part that shows Fred Rogers speaking to a reporter who was writing a story on him, in that part of the movie, Fred asked the reporter, who loved you in? Of course, there was an awkward silence and followed by, clearly, the reporter being a little uncomfortable with where the conversation was going. Following the release of the movie on the Today Show with Hoda and Jenna, Hoda interviewed part of the cast from A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. And there's a moment where in that interview, Tom Hanks sort of turns the tables on Hoda and asks her, who loved her? It's interesting. When I was in seminary, one of the first questions that was asked by the president of the college was, who loved you into ministry? There was dead silence. It was a real thought-provoking. But I knew the answer just as sure as I knew anything. I had gone through a discernment year prior to entering into seminary and following ministry, which I didn't realize I was doing when I followed the advice of the Reverend Dr. Margaret, who was the interim minister at Buffalo UU Church, when she suggested to me that I do a year-long program at Roswell Park Cancer Center focusing on pastoral care. I thought she was just looking at the future where I had been doing pastoral care as part of the lay ministry at the church. I know, because the night I received my certificate, from the head of the program, a small, still voice came to me as I looked at my family and my minister who were all there. They were loving me in my accomplishment. I realized at that same time, that was a very interesting time. In fact, my Aunt Marion, who was present that night, clicked a photo, not realizing, but knowing that my face looked funny or my demeanor was funny. And later she would ask me about that. I'm like, that's the moment. That was exactly the moment. But considering the question, who loved you into faith? That can be a tough one to answer. Especially since how we find faith as you use is a very personal and individual process. For myself, I think who first loved me into faith were the nuns who cared for me in the orphanage where I spent the months of my life. Unconditional love. There is no finer loving and coming from these religious women. That experience, even though I was young, I would be told the stories, parents and others, years going on, but I do believe it set the foundation for my understanding of faith. The way these women in their whole life were about children who were entrusted into their care until such time as they were going to be adopted. Of course, being adopted, I have a special day. February 15th isn't just the day you buy chocolates at half price, after Valentine's Day, but that was the day that I was adopted. And in my family, it was always celebrated. I think in some way as a faith and a love by my parents, again, continuing in the lessons of who has given you unconditional love. And in that continuation of loving me into a faith root. My life has always been filled with nuns, both as teachers and aunts. I had 3 aunts who were nuns. My experience of their life and commitment to helping others while loving me as their niece was a great gift. My Aunt Janet was present that night that I heard that still small voice whisper into my heart, "Become a minister." She was one of the first people that I actually told of my call, and she hugged me and loved me right through seminary and beyond. Now, I've spoken about finding my birth mother at age 40. It was a total act of faith, me believing that I would find her and also believing that she would want to hear from me. And I know everyone has different stories about adoption, and some have negative or other, but this is my story, so I'll just hold it as it is. So many of the details of how I found her were based on the belief that I was doing so in love. When I finally did meet her, I got to say things to her, my birth mother, that she had needed to hear for 40 years. There was no other person that could say these things to her. And she, in turn, told me things that I didn't know that my heart needed to hear. And all the while that this meeting was happening, there was a group of missionary nuns in Maryknoll, New York. That was where my Aunt Mary, the other nun, lived. And they were all in this prayer-a-thon on my behalf that everything would go well. So, who loved me into faith? My parents, my birth mom, nuns, more nuns, nuns again, family and teachers, and every day, my own children, only one of which got up this morning to come, but that's okay. A spiral of constant love that fed my faith in the finer principles that, for me, what it means to be a UU. Now, I'm aware that most people are never asked this question, possibly rarely. And yet, it's an important question to ponder. It is personal. It can be wrought with unpleasant or buried memories, or it might be just out of reach of comprehending. Hopefully we know who loves us, but loving us into faith, that can take quite a bit of reflection. As is said in the Bible, in Corinthians, love is greater than faith and hope in that both faith and hope depend on love for their existence. Without love, there can be no true faith. A loveless faith is nothing but an empty religious exercise. And Paul is quoted, "If I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing." I like that quote. I don't always use the Bible. That particular part says so much about the underlying root also lies in faith. And of course, it's love. And for us as Unitarian Universalists, it's about love and where we place love and how we view love that brings us together and our extension of principles. This is from the archives also in UUA history, and I will share with you these words. "Freedom, reason, and tolerance have been the watchwords of the Unitarian faith since its earliest days. In the 1500s, King Sigismund of Transylvania, who was converted to Unitarianism by his court minister, issued the world's first edict of religious toleration, which allowed his subjects to choose to observe religions other than the king's." A famous quote, in fact, the other night Max and I were driving on Sheridan Drive in Amherst, and this is up in front of one of the Jewish temples, the same quote. "We need not think alike to live alike." And this is credited to his minister, Francis David. I laughed and I said to Max, I wonder if they know that they've got a U at the Jewish temple, but it's okay, it's all right. It's a great thing to have, and I think it speaks to all religions, and it also speaks about faith. Loving alike, loving together, has everything to do with how we come together each week. That first principle, honoring the of every human being, that comes from a place of love. We could say that our ancestors, our UU ancestors, such as Michael Servatus, who was burned at the stake in 1553 for writing the book on errors of the Trinity. Of course, it was at the same time that Luther was knocked down, and it was during the Protestant Reformation. But that was the essence of many of the things that Servatus was writing about, was about love in the context of faith and outside of believing in the Trinity. Of course, some lesser-known UU ancestors are Catherine Vogel of Krakow. She was also burned at the stake for disavowing the Trinity and belonging to the Polish Unitarian Church. You may never have heard of her. Francis David, or sometimes Francois David or David, is his name, but it's Francis David, who under the support of King Sigismund, he formed the first Unitarian church in 1568 in Transylvania. Another ancestor who, it's why I get to be in the pulpit today, is Olympia Brown. She was the first ordained woman in the Unitarian faith in 1863, and she was a strong figure in the suffragist movement. One of the things that Olympia did is she was a circuit rider, much in some ways the things I do, going to our smaller congregations. And Olympia was so good at starting congregations that after she got a group together, they sent a male clergy in, because of course that's the only way it was going to survive. Poor Olympia, but she never gave up. She still continued and expressing and modeling and demonstrating what her faith as a Unitarian was about. And so on and so on. There are so many ancestors we could name, but it is our UU ancestors, by their history, love energy in the universe, that has also loved us into our faith today. If it's hard for you to think about who loved you into faith, think perhaps instead about who you are loving into faith. What does it look like? What do you see or imagine for the ones that you want to share your faith with and help to promote their faith base? Let's try that Fred Rogers tactic. We're going to take 10 seconds. You can either think about who loved you into faith, or think about who you are loving into faith, or just think about love, however it works. But let's do 10 seconds. whoever or whatever came to mind as you were taking those 10 seconds. And I know that's a forced time and it might not have fully given you an opportunity, but whoever came to mind, whoever you were thinking about, know that in the same way, those are the people to be grateful to for making you where you are and also for where you want the world to go. Not much more to say after that, except for love on. Let's all love on. It's okay, you don't have to. And so we come to my favorite part. This is the talk back, where you get to talk back and share your thoughts and ideas about the sermon topic or anything else that I've shared this morning that you're thinking about, or what good specials are at Wegmans, because some people do their Wegmans shopping list while they're here. It's okay. It's all love.
Much later in life, I came to realize an answer for the question that you had just asked about who sort of wrote you into being. Simone Weil died in 1943 when my mother was about 6 weeks pregnant with me, which may have been the day that, when she died, it may be the day that my soul came into my entity. Simone Weil has been my greatest spiritual mentor, and she became a member of the faith. She'd been raised Jewish, but she died of tuberculosis and/or starvation in London during World War II because she wouldn't eat more than what they were giving her fellow Jews back in France. And she had this inspiration with George Herbert's poem Love 3, which I've made presentations about, where she was taken up by Jesus onto his knee in the poem by George Herbert, who was a deist minister from 200 years before. And that inspired her life. Now, she went on, like her brother, became the greatest mathematicians in the world, and he didn't die till about 1995 at Princeton University. But she inspires my life completely, and those names are it for me. Russell James being, or William James being the other James philosopher that inspires my life.
Your challenge is interesting for me to answer, Susan. If I just look around this sanctuary and at this building and realize that 100 years ago, a group of people organized this congregation and built this wonderful place. I curse it a lot, but that's because we have to keep fixing it. But they did a great thing for us and for the world, and certainly for this community, to establish this organization and build this building for it.
Yeah, it's funny. Peter should comment on that because I've kind of had that thought too. Really funny because you're in here alone working on things sometimes, and you kind of just get caught up in the spirits of all the folks who made this happen, that you kind of sense it in the walls somehow. And you know, and you think if it weren't for them and all that they did, none of this would happen. I mean, all the sacrifices that were made by all the people. It's like a giant relay race all through the generations to make it possible for us to be here. And we are here because of them. So, you know, excellent point. So, thank you.
I'm not sure if Richard wanted to say something. He unmuted himself.
Yes, he's trying to figure out his machine.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Richard.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, in terms of people who drew you into faith and the history of the church, I'm the son of Eleanor and Arthur Layton, the grandson of Frederick Layton and Ruth Layton, who were the founding members of that church. I'm so honored to see that people still attend the church and put such great respect on my heritage. Thank you.
I wanted to say how much I appreciate the fact that my parents chose to become church members. At first, my mother just took my brother and I to the local Presbyterian church, which was like a block away. It was a real neighborhood church. And it was a lovely church. And my father, who had come back just recently from World War II, he was very young. He was drafted when he was 19. Could not be part of the church, okay, at that time because of his war experiences. And a minister talked with him over the years, and eventually he joined the church and was very active in different leadership roles. But it gave me, as a child and a teenager, wonderful experiences besides a faith-based structure that eventually led me to Unitarianism, actually by another family member, a sister-in-law. But I really have appreciated everything that I've gotten from my church communities, and it's made a real difference. And appreciate the fact that my parents, made that possible.
Well, I appreciate everyone who was sharing and everyone else paying attention and listening. Part of our coming together in community is hearing each other's thoughts and hearing the voices of the congregation. To me, that's a way that you minister to me, and for that I am very grateful, and I thank you for that. So I invite you to find hymn 205, Amazing Grace. Patty's going to play us through, and again, we will rise in body or spirit as we be willing or able, and we will sing together.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but
be seated. Our benediction words today come from Anne Frank. She says, "Despite everything, I believe that people are good at heart." Words of Anne Frank. Wally, do you want to extinguish our chalice, please? Yes. Thank you so much. I invite everyone to find our chalice extinguishing words. And as Wally extinguishes our chalice, let's read together. "We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hands until we are together again." Max, you want to grace us with some music?
Oh, yes. I got all my stuff. Yep.
No, this one. Okay. I used to float, now I just fall down. I used to know, but I'm not sure now what I was made for. What was I made for? Taking a drive, I wasn't ideal, looked so alive. Turns out I'm not real, just something you paid for. What was I made for? 'Cause I don't know how to feel, but someday I might. Someday I might. When did it end? All the enjoyment. I'm sad again. Don't tell my boyfriend it's not what he's made for. What was I made for? 'Cause I don't know how to feel, but I wanna try. I don't know how to feel, but someday I might. Someday I might. Think I forgot how to be happy. Something I'm not, but something I can't be. Something I wait for. Something I'm made for.